Silence in court. The crisp slap of the judge's gavel boomed like thunder, stinging the sea of whispers that had saturated the air. For an instant, there was only the frantic clicking of cameras from the news media, eager to record every moment of this trial. The air was charged, heavy with tension, and every individual there knew they were on the verge of witnessing something historic. Standing at the core of it all was Gwen Brown. No one had ever dreamed that this time would come. Gwen, the reserved daughter of Christine and Cody Brown, was noted for her truthfulness, her vulnerability, and her resilience. But never before had she been observed in so much force. Standing erect, chin held high, eyes blazing with intensity. She was no longer a daughter. She was a warrior, ready to fight her own father for the war of her life. And facing her was Cody Brown, patriarch of the Brown clan, once regarded as the commanding figure of a sprawling polygamous kingdom. But now his bravado was shattered. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his jaw clenched, his arms wrapped protectively across his chest. Cameras captured every twitch of anxiety, every false smile he attempted to muster. The case in point, Gwen had accused her father of betraying her, of keeping money from the family and shutting her out of that which was hers. When the charge was made public, the world was shocked. Sister Wives fans believed they'd seen it all. The breakdowns in marriages, the beefs, the crying. But this topped it all. Gwen, that daughter who'd been quiet for so long in the background, now had her father's face in the headlines, revealing secrets that had been kept under wraps for so long. Gasps echoed throughout the courtroom as the official charges were read. This was more than a family fight. This was more than just another Brown family fight. This was war, and the battleground was a courtroom filled with reporters, fans, and even strangers who wanted to see the downfall of a man who once boasted control. The room was tense. Every available seat was occupied. Reporters sat poised with pens, laptops open, headlines all but writing themselves. Brown family scandal unfolds in court. Others murmured to each other, wondering what sensational tidbits would be revealed. Christine Brown, Gwen's mother, sat right behind her daughter, pale-faced but her hands clenched tightly in solidarity. She had known Cody for years, had weathered his infidelities and favoritism, but even she hadn't quite anticipated her daughter going this far. And yet here she was, observing with a sense of pride and trepidation. Mary and Janelle, two of Cody's ex-wives, also showed up, their faces impassive but their silence telling. Everyone was wondering, were they here to rally for Gwen, or just to witness Cody's empire topple around him? Robin, Cody's last remaining wife, sat next to him, her face set, her hand clamped on his arm as if to support him. But she glanced nervously around the courtroom, unable to look at Gwen. The judge exchanged his glasses and peered down at the papers in front of him. His tone was assertive yet steady. This court will consider the case of Gwen Brown against Cody Brown. Accusations are financial concealment, fraud, and illegal withholding of money. There was another wave of murmurs that swirled through the room. Financial cover-up. Deception. These were not family fights. These were infractions that could ruin reputations, shatter legacies, and even send one to jail. Gwen took a deep breath. Her fingers clenched around the lip of the table in front of her. She could sense the pressure of every gaze in the room bearing down on her. She wasn't only doing this for herself today. She was doing it for her siblings, for her mother, for each of her father's broken promises. Her attorney leaned in close and whispered, "Be calm. Be clear. The truth is on your side." But Gwen was well aware of that. She didn't fear the truth. What frightened her was the lies that would attempt to bury it. When she finally spoke, her voice was even, full of both pain and strength. "This isn't about money," she said, her words echoing off the empty room. "This is about betrayal. This is about a father who chose greed over his children, who believed he could manipulate and control us forever. But today, I stand here to say, no more." The courtroom exploded. Whispers, gasps, even sobs filled the air. The judge rapped his gavel once more, commanding the room to be still, but the harm was done. Gwen's words had struck like a lightning bolt. Cody's jaw clenched, his face red with rage. He leaned forward, hissing furiously at his attorney. But Gwen did not glance at him. She had her eyes straight ahead. Intense, unyielding. Reporters wrote frantically. Already thinking of tomorrow's headlines, Gwen Brown exposes father's betrayal in explosive trial. Cody Brown's empire on the brink as daughter testifies. Christine reached forward, squeezing Gwen's shoulder. It was a silent message. You're not alone. But the gravity of the situation still weighed heavily. Gwen felt her heart pounding, her palms slick with sweat, but she would not turn back. She had carried this secret too long, had suffered too many falsehoods, too many explanations. Today it ended. For Cody, this was just another test to be passed. Something he could talk his way through. Something he could spin to make him the victim. But on a deep level, even he was aware that Gwen was not like the others. She wasn't intimidated by him. She wasn't intimidated by his power, his words, or his threats. She was armed with the one thing he couldn't conquer. The truth. The silence hung, weighty and oppressive, as the judge contemplated proceeding. Everyone in the courtroom was aware that this was only the starting point, but already the battle lines were drawn. Cody Brown, who had once constructed his family on unity and faith, now sat accused. And Gwen Brown, who once had been a shadowy daughter, now stood as his biggest opponent. This was not just a case. This was a war that might break the Brown family dynasty for good. The judge inched forward, his voice booming over the hushed room. Go ahead with your evidence. The prosecutor, a piercing woman in a black suit, stood up assertively. She straightened her glasses and faced Cody Brown. Her tone was stern, every word slicing through the air like a blade. Brown, did you or did you not transfer huge amounts of money from joint family accounts to hidden investments? Investments that your children weren't informed about, and even some of your wives weren't informed about. The question hit hard. The whole courtroom came to a standstill, eyes darting towards Cody. Cody rocked uncomfortably in his chair, his lips curled into a look that resembled a forced smile. I don't remember, he grumbled, his words dripping with arrogance. The audience gasped. All of them had witnessed Cody's charm on television. The ability to talk rings around anyone, manipulate words until they fit. But this was court. This was under oath. Before the prosecutor could speak again, Gwen suddenly stood. The courtroom went silent. She held a thick stack of papers in her hands, her fingers trembling slightly, but her eyes locked onto her father with unshakable fire. Then maybe you'll recall this, Gwen said, her voice steady, echoing off the walls. She walked forward, the sound of her heels sharp against the marble floor, and handed the judge the documents. The judge adjusted his glasses and began flipping through the papers. The courtroom was so silent that the faint rustling of pages sounded like thunder. These are bank statements, Gwen explained, her voice growing stronger with every word. Statements that show exactly where the money went. Transfers, withdrawals, deposits into accounts none of us even knew existed. Accounts under your name. Dad? Gasps filled the air once more. Cameras popped. Reporters almost jumped from their seats, fingers tapping furiously across keyboards. This was the smoking gun everyone had been hoping for. Christine grasped her chest, tears welling in her eyes. She had always suspected Cody of financial tampering, but having the proof presented so clearly was heartbreaking. Cody's face set. He spun quickly to his attorney, muttering in anger, but nothing could take back what was now true. The evidence was public. The prosecutor smiled a little, feeling triumph. Mr. Brown, she pushed, would you care to tell us about these transfers, or shall we let the papers do the talking? Cody's attorney leapt to his feet. Objection, these records might be altered. We cannot. But the judge held up a hand. Overruled. This evidence will be taken into account. Go on. The impact of that decision was devastating. Gwen felt a sense of relief, but also terror. This was risky ground. Revealing her father wasn't about winning a case. It was about tearing down the pretense he'd constructed for decades. As the judge continued to review the documents, murmurs spread like wildfire through the courtroom. Everyone was talking at once. Unbelievable. She really caught him. Cody's done for. The bailiff had to shout for silence, restoring order before the trial could continue. Christine leaned forward and whispered to Gwen, I'm so proud of you. Don't stop now. Gwen swallowed, her throat constricted with emotion. She had envisioned this moment, envisioned her father held responsible for the deceit and betrayal. But experiencing it was so much weightier, so much more tangible. The prosecutor faced Cody again. These accounts add up to almost $500,000. None of your children were told. None of the other wives were told. So I'm asking you again, Mr. Brown, did you knowingly conceal this money? Cody swallowed hard. His bravado was shaken. It wasn't concealing. He finally stammered, his voice rising defensively. It was safeguarding. That money was for emergencies. For the future. For you. Gwen cut in harshly. Her voice cut through the courtroom like a knife. Everyone stared at her. That money wasn't for us, Dad. It was never meant for us. If it was, you wouldn't have concealed it. You wouldn't have lied. You wouldn't have shut us out of it altogether. The words lingered, heavy, incriminating, true. Robin shifted uncomfortably next to Cody, her hand sliding off his arm. For once she couldn't conceal her unease. The judge's eyebrow went up, and he appeared visibly upset at what he was being told. Mr. Brown, he instructed sternly, the testimony here is raising some serious doubts about your behavior. You will be given the chance to defend yourself, but I would suggest that you think before you speak. The room was whirling with emotion, anger, betrayal, incredulity. Christine brushed away tears. Janelle's arms were folded, face one of stern satisfaction. Even Mary, usually detached, appeared shaken, her eyes flicking between Gwen and Cody as if she was finally witnessing the truth laid out before her. The experience overwhelmed Gwen. She felt the adrenaline pumping through her veins, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. But she also felt strong. For the first time in years, perhaps in her life, she wasn't the timid, forgotten daughter. She was the one throwing light into the darkness her father had built. The prosecutor pounced for the kill. Mr. Brown, isn't it true that these transfers started right after Christine left you? That you did this deliberately, so that her children, including Gwen, would never see a dime of it? The audience gasped again. Christine's lips opened in shock. Cody pounded his fist on the table. That's a lie. I would never then. Then why the secrecy? Gwen demanded. Her voice broke, but the raw emotion behind it shook the room. Why didn't you tell us? Why did you take from your own children? Wasn't breaking our family apart enough? You had to take our future too. The silence that followed was crushing. Even the reporters ceased typing, their eyes wide, waiting for his response. But Cody didn't have any. He sat back, his face flushed, his fists tight. He resembled less the mighty patriarch everyone used to revere, and more a man trapped in his own web of deceit. The judge cleared his throat. The proof is formidable. This court will scrutinize every transaction, every ledger. But what we have witnessed today already makes for a disturbing tableau. With that he declared a brief recess. The bailiff's voice thundered, calling the court to order as individuals stood from their chairs. With murmurs of shock, as Gwen took her seat, Christine put her arms around her. You did it, she whispered. You revealed the truth. But Gwen merely shook her head, not once looking away from Cody. This isn't over, she whispered. Not even close. And she was correct. The secret truths were only now coming to light. What was beneath them was darker, more sinister, and more surprising than anyone in that room could have dreamed. The war for Brown family legacy had just started. The courtroom hummed with tension as the recess was over. Individuals moved back into their seats, muttering frantically about Gwen's volatile testimony. Some were certain she had already won the case. Others pondered whether Cody had a trick or two up his sleeve. No one, not even Gwen, anticipated what followed. However, the defense attorney stood assertively and spoke to the judge. Your Honor, the defense would like to place a witness on the stand. The judge nodded. Proceed. All eyes were on the double doors at the rear of the courtroom. When they opened, the atmosphere changed. Whispers rose, growing to gasps as the witness entered. It was Robin Brown. Gwen's stomach dropped. She gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. She should have known. Robin wasn't just Cody's last remaining wife. She was his fiercest defender, his most loyal ally. Reporters scrambled to capture the moment. Fans in the gallery whispered in disbelief. Of course it's Robin. The bailiff led her to the witness stand. Robin's expression was uninterpretable, but for an instant her eyes snapped to Gwen, sharp and icy. As soon as she was sworn in, The defense attorney did not hesitate. Mrs. Brown, can you inform this court what you do know regarding Gwen's allegations? Robin's tone was smooth, near rehearsal. Yes. I can tell you that Gwen is overstatement. Cody never stole from the family. He never stashed money. The whole case is based on anger, resentment, and misconstruing. Gwen is resentful, and this is her way of punishing her father. The words cut deep like knives. Gwen could feel them piercing her heart. Objection. Gwen's lawyer jumped up. That's speculating. The judge pondered for a moment. He sustained, Mrs. Brown, please confine yourselves to statements of fact. Robin nodded, attempting to appear innocent. The truth is Cody always provided for his family. He made sacrifices for us. He bore the weight of finances for years. If money was transferred, it was in the form of protection. Gwen isn't seeing the whole picture. The courtroom buzzed with activity. Half the room leaned toward Cody, the other half toward Gwen. Gwen's heart was racing. Betrayal from her dad hurt, but betrayal from Robin out loud, on the stand under oath, cut all the deeper. Her attorney whispered, remain calm, we will cross-examine. But Gwen couldn't remain silent. She rose, her voice shaking but firm. Robin, you know that's not true. The judge's eyebrow shot up. Miss Brown, please, but Gwen kept going, her words rushing out like flame. You signed some of them. You saw the transfers. Don't you sit there and pretend like you don't know what went on. You were in on it. The room went crazy. There were gasps, shouts, even sobs. The judge slammed his gavel down, calling for order. Robin's expression stiffened. For a fraction of an instant, the facade slipped, and he glimpsed the cold resolve that lay beneath. I don't know what she's saying, she replied curtly. But Gwen saw it. The flash of fear in Robin's eyes. The minuscule crack in her shell. Her attorney intervened. Let's continue with cross-examination. He strode slowly towards Robin, his voice steady but biting. Mrs. Brown, you say Gwen is bitter, but bitterness doesn't make bank records. Do you not deny that your name is on a number of these documents as an approving signatory? Robin shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I don't know if I signed those. Do you want the court to refresh your memory? The attorney asked, displaying blown-up copies of the documents. The jury leaned forward. The crowd was quiet, waiting. Robin went white. I signed documents all the time. Cody managed finances. I trusted him. If my signature is on there, I did not know what it was for. Her defense was flimsy, and everybody knew it. But still, the betrayal hurt. Gwen could feel her throat constricting, tears pricking her eyes. She balled her fists under the table. She couldn't let Robin witness her breakdown. The lawyer tried to push harder. Mrs. Brown, are you informing this court that you signed financial documents worth hundreds of thousands of dollars without reading them? I trusted my husband. Robin shot back, her tone a little crisper now. I didn't question him. He supported us. He always does. The prosecutor interjected. So you acknowledge you enabled this, that you assisted in concealing money, even if you say you didn't realize it? Robin stood stock still. For the first time she was without a response. The courtroom gasped once more. Cameras zoomed in, freezing every movement of her face. This was it, the moment when the devoted wife's testimony disintegrated. But for Gwen, the damage was already done. Robin had confronted her, branding her as bitter and resentful. And though the evidence cried out, the emotional blow of being betrayed by one who should have held her side was nearly intolerable. She edged a little to the side, looking back at her siblings in the gallery. Some of them gazed at her sympathetically, others uncertainly. Was she losing them too? Was Cody's hold still secure enough to keep them apart? Her lawyer concluded the cross-examination with one final jab. Mrs. Brown, knowingly or blindly, the evidence indicates your complicity. You can shield Mr. Brown with your words. But paper evidence speaks a very different tale. Robin averted her gaze. Her lips clenched tightly together. The judge nodded. The witness may be excused. As Robin returned to her seat next to Cody, Gwen's gaze followed. For a brief moment, their eyes clashed. Gwen's was a flash of hurt and defiance. Robin's, cold and unyielding, but with that faint flicker of fear still present. The betrayal was complete, but Gwen wasn't shattered. If anything, the flame within her was burning hotter. She leaned close to her lawyer and whispered, "They can lie all they want, but I'll make sure the truth speaks louder." And in that moment, The battle lines were clearer than ever. This wasn't just Gwen versus Cody. It was Gwen versus the lies, the manipulation, and the betrayal of an entire system built to protect him. And she wasn't backing down. The courtroom was thick with quiet. When Robin left the witness stand, Gwen sat locked, her fists around the edge of the table. Betrayed, but not defeated. She knew the battle wasn't finished. If anything, it was only going to get blacker. The judge cleared his throat. We will continue with the presentation of evidence. Counsel, proceed. The prosecutor stood up again, gripping a folder so heavy it looked like it held the whole history of the Brown family. She set it down on the table with a thud that filled the room. Your Honor, she began. What we are about to present establishes not only concealment of funds, but intentional manipulation and deception by Mr. Brown. All attention was focused on Cody. His jaw was clenched, his face pale but stubbornly defiant. He was still convinced that he could bluff his way out. The prosecutor started showing documents on a massive screen to the jury and the crowd. The transaction records, wire transfer and secret investments rolled by one after another on the screen. Not one-time errors, she asserted. A pattern, a system, and the one who lost the most was Gwen Brown. Gasps arose as she indicated a transfer of nearly $50,000 that had been made just a few days after Gwen's birthday. Money that had been earmarked as part of a trust fund for Christine's children. Instead, it had disappeared into a shell account controlled by Cody. Christine hid her face in her hands. Gwen's throat constricted, but she sat upright. She needed the world to witness. She needed them to understand. The prosecutor's tone became more cutting. And that's not all. In a period of 5 years, over $500,000 vanished into hidden accounts, funds for his children's education, their futures, their security. Whispers spread through the room. The judge had to rap for order. Cody's attorney attempted to interrupt. Objection, this is circumstantial. But the prosecutor interrupted him. Circumstantial, or unavoidable. She pressed a button, and another document materialized on the screen. This one with Robin's signature next to Cody's. The betrayal was on paper. Robin reddened and looked down, squirming uncomfortably but remaining silent. The pressure was too much. Each disclosure felt like another knife to Cody's shield. But Gwen wasn't done. She moved toward her attorney, speaking under her breath. It's time. Her attorney nodded and took out a small device from their case. A USB stick. Your Honor, he went on. The plaintiff would like to present audio testimony. The judge furrowed his brow. Proceed. The bailiff inserted the drive into the court system. The bailiff inserted the drive into the court system. Hushed silence fell as the speakers crackled to life. And then, Cody's voice echoed through the room. They'll never know. The money is mine. Gwen doesn't deserve a penny. The words were crisp, chilly, and unmistakable. The courtroom exploded. Gasps became shouts. Reporters jumped to their feet, scrambling out to report their stories. Even the judge visibly winced. Christine cried silently, shaking in her hands. Janelle's lips were pressed into a hard line. Mary sat forward, eyes wide in shock. Robin appeared as if the floor had been sucked from beneath her feet. Her hand covered her mouth, her face going pale. And Cody, the man who had always boasted of control, sat frozen, his mouth agape, his eyes flying wildly. His mask was shattered. The truth was irrefutable. The judge banged his gavel, calling for silence. Order! Order in the court. When the room finally quieted, Gwen rose. Her legs trembled, but her voice did not waver. That's my father. That's the man who said he loved his children. That's the man who looked me in the eye and said family was everything. But behind closed doors, he said I didn't deserve a penny. This isn't about bitterness. This isn't about revenge. This is about truth. She spoke over the hush like a knife. The judge came forward. Mr. Brown, do you have any denial that that is your voice? Cody's attorney leapt to his feet, panicky. It might have been edited, manipulated. But Cody, sweaty and white, cut in. It's me. His confession caused another wave of shock in the courtroom. Photographers snapped furiously. Reporters had to push chairs over to get the shot. Cody buried his face in his hands, cursing under his breath. Robin reached out to him, but he pushed her away, his pride broken irretrievably. The judge's voice was firm. This court will weigh this evidence carefully. We will adjourn for the night, and again convene tomorrow to hear closing arguments. The gavel came down. But the suspense did not cease there. As the courtroom emptied, whispers filled the air. The audio recording was everywhere now. Reporters broadcasting it, social media exploding with reaction. Gwen's words, Cody's confession, it was already viral. Christine clung to Gwen as they walked out, tears streaming down her face. "You've done it," she whispered. "You've finally done it." But Gwen shook her head. Her heart pounded. "Not yet. Tomorrow decides everything." Behind them, Cody sat, his face buried in his hands. The man who had established his family on loyalty and faith was now suffocating under his own betrayal. Robin sat next to him, blankly staring at the ground, her once untouchable loyalty now shattering under the onslaught of truth. And the rest of the family, they sat silently, caught between love, rage, and disbelief. The tension hung over them like a storm cloud. The world was holding its breath, waiting for the verdict. Would Gwen finally receive justice, or would Cody manage to find one last way to manipulate the truth? No one knew, but one thing was sure. The Brown family would never be the same again. It was hardly dawn before crowds of people started waiting in line at the courthouse. The audio recording had erupted during the night, flooding news stations, social media websites, and gossip websites. Everywhere, people repeated Cody Brown's word. "The money is mine. Gwen doesn't deserve a dime." By morning the whole country was tuned in. This was no longer a trial, it was a reckoning. Within the courtroom, the mood was even more oppressive than previously. All seats were taken, the media section packed with cameras, and the corridor outside filled with chants by spectators calling for justice. When Gwen walked in with Christine beside her, the courtroom erupted in a tide of sympathy. There were even soft claps, although the bailiff at once called for order. Gwen's face was white but resolute, her chin up. She had brought the truth this far. Now she hoped the court would bring it the rest of the way. Across the aisle, Cody lowered himself into his chair. The formerly charismatic patriarch resembled a broken man, his suit rumpled, his eyes vacant. Robin sat beside him. Rigid and unbroken, her hand quivering spasmodically in her lap. She no longer reached out to him. She couldn't. Not once the world had heard his infidelity in his own voice. The judge entered, and the courtroom was silent. His gavel came down. This court will now render its verdict. The words sent Gwen's stomach in flips. Her heart pounded in her chest. She gripped Christine's hand hard, her whole body shuddering with expectation. The judge's words were slow, measured, his voice heavy with the burden of justice. Throughout this trial, this court has heard corroborating testimony, scrutinized financial documentation, and analyzed recordings. The issue before us was whether Mr. Cody Brown acted knowingly to hide assets and deny his daughter her just share. There was a hush in the room, but for the scratching of reporters' pens. The judge went on, his face stern. "The proof given, the bank statements, the signatures, and the recording of Mr. Brown himself, leaves no question in this court. Mr. Brown acted knowingly and fraudulently. He hid money, violated the trust of his family, and caused injury to his daughter." Gwen was holding her breath. Gasps spread through the courtroom. The judge stared straight at Cody. "This court finds the defendant, Cody Brown, guilty of concealment and financial fraud." The room broke out. Cheers, weeping gasps, and frantic camera clicking shook the air. The bailiff yelled for order, but the emotion was beyond control. Christine began weeping uncontrollably, embracing Gwen. "You did it," she said. "You finally did it." Gwen's own tears fell freely. She could hardly breathe. The relief was so overwhelming. She had fought this fight so long, and now, finally, justice was hers. The judge held up his hand for quiet and went on. "This court directs the restoration forthwith of all hidden funds to Gwen Brown and to her rightful trust. In addition, punitive damages are granted of $250,000 for financial and emotional damage resulting from Mr. Brown's action." The courtroom gasped once again. $500,000 returned, plus damages. Cody's empire, already dissolving, now lay in ruins. Gwen brushed her tears away, her body trembling.
This was not about the money. It had never been about the money. It was about the truth. About finally escaping the shackles of betrayal.
The judge nodded. Please read the verdict. The foreperson unfolded a piece of paper. The crackle of the paper echoed through the room. All leaned forward. All breaths were held captive by the moment. In the case of this matter, we, the jury, find the defendant. The silence was agonizing. Seconds elongated into forever. A child in the back whimpered quietly. Guilty. The term fell like a thunderclap. It was over. It was done. It was all the family had waited for. And all the accused had dreaded. A cry erupted from the family bench. Tears streamed, some of joy, others of sorrow. Brothers hugged, shaking in each other's arms. A mother fell into the arms of her daughter and whispered, "It's over, it's finally over." The defendant winced as if hit. His shoulders hunched in, his face pale and devoid of all color. He shook his head for an instant, as if trying to refuse reality. His lips formed words, but no words were uttered. His attorney laid a reassuring hand on his shoulder, but even that could not ground him. The judge rapped his gavel to bring the room into order. Order in the court. But the thing was, silence could no longer be had here. Feelings were too raw, too intense. The prosecutor took a deep breath. His work done. He nodded to the family. A slight, respectful nod. He brought their words with him into this courtroom. And now, justice had been spoken. The judge addressed the defendant. His tone was stern, but under it lay an undertone of sadness. You were trusted. You were sought out as a guardian, as a bastion of strength. Instead, you destroyed that trust. You failed in your responsibility. You betrayed those who relied on you most. This court finds you guilty, and sentencing will be forthcoming. The defendant pushed his face into his hands. For the very first time since proceedings had started, he released a small, shattered sob. But it was too late. The verdict was out. The repercussions of his decisions had finally reached him. The side of the family was a sea of emotion, relief, vindication, but also heartache. Because even with justice being served, nothing could erase the years of suffering. Nothing could restore what was lost. Justice wasn't a reset button. It was merely acknowledgement, a sign that what they went through was real, and that the person who was responsible was finally held responsible. One of the siblings, crying, whispered, "We finally count." Our voices were heard. Those words resonated across the room, entering each heart. The judge excused the jury, giving them thanks for their service. They filed out as the jurors looked at the family with silent sympathy. They had fulfilled their obligation, but they realized the burden of their verdict would live in their hearts forever. As the court emptied in slow motion, journalists mouthed hushed words into tape recorders, and artists inched in the final brushstrokes of history. But the most evocative photo was not that of the defendant, or even that of the verdict. It was of the family, torn but together, bruised but unbroken, standing from their seats as a unit. They walked out in one. To the viewers watching this tale play out, the lesson was inescapable. Betrayal kills, but truth heals. This was not about one man's downfall. This was about the strength it took for a family to speak their truth, to bring their pain into the light of day, and to hold people accountable. And even though the courtroom had cleared, even though the ring of the gavel had grown quiet, the tale would endure. A tale of sorrow, a tale of survival, a tale of justice. For in the end of it all, the hush that had smothered the room had been shattered permanently.